Let's Talk to Animals. My name is Shannon. I'm an animal intuitive and sensitive, an animal communicator, if you will, and a Reiki master practitioner here at Animal Love Languages. And behind me, if you're watching the video, you can see my 23-year-old soul bird, Pearl. He is here as always. He never misses an episode. He's just having his fresh, warm rice dinner at the moment. There you go. Those of you who are listening, he just checked in with a little chirp. And today I have the amazing privilege and honor of welcoming Europe's leading animal intuitive and energy light worker, Laila del Monte. And that's also her website, Lailadel Monte, Monte. I'll put that in the show notes. Laila, oh my goodness, such an honor to meet you and to see you today. Thank you
so much
for joining us. It's
you.
really exciting. You know, I watched your film. I watched your feature film, and I was like, this is so cool. I get to meet her.
Thank
It's
you.
really amazing because you talked with a lot of folks who were on the front end were kind of like, you do what exactly? And it was really interesting to watch you so gently and graciously just guiding them into a little bit of an expanded state of awareness and just openness. That must have been so. If you're listening or you're watching today, because I know we've got a lot of budding animal communicators, we've got a lot of intuitive pet parents who want to know more about what's out there to improve the health and happiness of their pets. We have professional animal communicators who listen and tune in, and there's one thing I can't get enough of. It's stories about animals getting their messages through. And so I highly recommend the movie you can find it easily under Laila's name on YouTube. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Delighted to have you. And here at Let's Talk to Animals are really all about demystifying, de-wooing, if you will, interspecies conversation. What is it? How does it work? Who can do it? How do you learn? So, of course, you've been doing this for well over 2 decades, and yet I'm going to invite you to take us back to the beginning, if you will, and just share a little bit about your story. How did you, because I hear from people who are just like, I think this might be happening for me. I think my pet's trying to tell me something, but they don't have that validation. They don't have a set of believing eyes or ears or anyone to talk to about it. And so it really helps to hear these personal stories and just kind of get a little bit of, have a connection with somebody. It's like, that gives me a little bit more insight into what's happening with me and my pet.
Yes. So you really want to hear the beginning?
I really do.
Okay.
I really do.
Okay, so I was born in America, but I was raised in France and Spain. So we used to go in Spain on an island called Formentera on the Balearic Islands. And we would spend very long, extended summers, beyond 3 months, because my parents were writers and they would go to write. And so it was very primitive in those days. There was no running water, no electricity. And it was farms. So I was raised with farm animals, which is mainly goats, sheep, donkeys, of course, dog and cats, and pigs, mainly that, because it's the Mediterranean. So when I was a kid, so that was after 4 years old, on the farm, to me it was completely normal. I would hear sentences and I would know how they were feeling, or I would have pictures. But to me, I never even thought that the word animal communication could exist, because it was normal. And I would just relay the stuff to my parents, and they were used to me, so they didn't I was lucky. I had very open parents.
They were used to you. I would hope so.
So I was lucky with that. And to me, it was just completely normal until I got to school. So I was raised in Paris, in French school. And that's when I started realizing, well, there was something a bit different. And then I was afraid not to fit in because already I was American and I didn't speak French, which of course I do now. We only spoke English at home, so I had to fit in and not be too different because they were all, always making fun of me, kids. So I didn't speak about that part. Only my parents and when we would go back to the island. So that's how that's the beginning to me was something completely, absolutely normal. And I had it throughout my whole life. I was always with animals. Then I dedicated my life to being an artist. So there, the feelings would happen a bit with people and all that. And then you want me to continue?
I do. I'm hooked now. We got another movie in the making.
And then what happened is parallel to being a dancer, I started getting a lot of spiritual experiences. I was doing healing for people. And one day, one woman asked me, she said, could you tell me about my cat? Like, just like that, out of the blue, in America. This was in LA. Before I went back to live in Europe. So I said, okay, so I had the picture and I started telling her a bunch of stuff. So that started, she started telling all her friends. It just happened so fast. I was an artist at that time. I really didn't necessarily want to do this, I was a dancer. That's the only thing that counted for me was flamenco dancing in those days. And I used to like doing the healings for people. So I told her stuff. She told other people. It went, kept going bigger and bigger. And then I was invited in Colorado to do a workshop to teach in Colorado there was 40 horses, and that was my first teaching experience in Colorado. So then I had to put together a technique because I couldn't just tell people, oh, well, you just connect and you just know. I couldn't tell them that, as you well know.
You're going to want a few more details. Yeah.
So that was my first teaching experience. And then after that, I was invited by an American woman in Paris to give a lecture. And in that lecture, there was a French woman who came, who had a big equestrian center. And she said, Laila, I'm going to have you meet the French national team of horses. And so I met the French national team and I met the big horse rider. And she started inviting me for workshops. So I started going more and more to Europe, which I was delighted because I could eat, French good things. I speak French again. And so then it all went to Europe, actually. All my clientele was in Europe. And then I started developing Switzerland, Belgium, all of that. That's where we did the movie. We did it in different parts of Europe and Germany too.
It's gorgeous. Yeah. It was just gorgeous.
Thank you.
And yet so brave, because here we are, and the last couple years with the lockdown and our 24/7 spending time in our own company, it feels like it's really opened us up to our inner worlds a lot more. It feels like a lot of the language has changed. There's a lot more curiosity and wondering going on versus just shaming and shutting down. And yet there's still always going to be that fear factor, especially once we're kind of trying to, I loved what you said about how, because I just went through this teaching my first class. I had 5 of my clients come to me and ask me if I taught. And I was like, well, not yet, but I guess I do now. And it was such a process to put together because we don't think about how we have conversations with others of our own species anymore. We do it. We've been doing it since before we knew we had a choice. And so, it's easy for people who are brand new to forget that they already have a lot of the basics, the basic skills, the communication fundamentals under their belt. It's about translating it into this new format where we're using all of our communication pathways rather than just the mind.
Yes.
And so, one of the big questions that often comes up is how do you know when it's the animal talking to you versus when it's your own mind making stuff up, right? This is the big thing. And it feels like that has become the block, those of you who are listening, you can't see me making air quotes, but the block that shuts a lot of budding interspecies communicators down and really cuts the animals in the middle of telling them something, and they cut them off thinking, oh, it's my mind, I'm making it up. So because you came from such a unique place that you almost had to back into it, what was that like, trying to, you never knew life without it?
Yes, I mean, to me, I never ever doubted the information. It was like, to me, it was just obvious. What was not obvious is the opposite, like that, that there is not that communication. So that to me was normal. What I encountered is, of course, when I started teaching, like as you said, is the doubt for people. So like if I can give a little piece of advice about that,
absolutely,
for whoever's listening, I mean, I really think it's about discipline. It's about applying protocols and knowing also what type of strength everyone has. So some people really receive information by clairvoyance, by images. Others really they hear. Others get sense feelings, and others just know. So you have to first know your strength, because if you're clairaudient and you're expecting to have images, then you're going to get upset. Because some people say, oh, I can't see anything. I'm like, well, maybe not. Maybe you're receiving it in another way. So let's explore how you would be receiving this information. So that's number one. And then there's the part where people doubt themselves. They doubt what they receive. So the doubting, the only way to doubt is normal. It's part of human nature. To eliminate that is really the process of practice and doing and doing and doing, so you get used to it, and then you start acquiring more discernment, and then you're able to know, okay, this is me, this is my imagination, and this is not my imagination, this is something I really received. But it takes work. It takes work and effort. It's not just something that happens just like that, out of the blue. That's at least what I think.
Well, and here's the other piece of it too, because that's one part of it, is just starting to trust the all these different, I love how you were saying, maybe you see in a different way. It's like we can see with our ears and hear with our eyes. And I often share the story of how when I first started learning to communicate, because I came to this later in life, it felt like there were a lot of bells and whistles inside of me that started to turn on that I didn't know were there.
Yeah.
And that's a really good reason to explore and play with interspecies communication as well. But here's the other piece, and this really surprised me, and it surprises a lot of folks that I talk with, because they're, our own species is not always easy to love, especially right now. And so there's a lot of folks that are like, I think I'm just going to make a midlife career switch. I'm just going to work with animals because I love animals. And I still remember the day in my very first, and I've taken with a lot of, I've studied with a lot of different teachers now, because I kind of just want to learn. I love it. I want to learn. But the very first teacher I had, when she introduced tuning into the human, and I was like, oh no, that's not for me. No, I didn't sign up for that track. I just want to talk to the animal. And she's trying to explain. My practice partner was like, just give it a try, Shannon, just give it a try. It was like, I'd spent 10 years as a freelance writer dealing with people. I was like, no, I don't, and so there's that as well. And that's what you demonstrated so beautifully in the movie. Is, of course, you have this natural flow, this trusted open line of communication with the animal, and then it comes time to share with the human. And so can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's the other piece that kind of shuts people down, whether it's being open to working with one of us, hiring you or hiring myself to talk to the animal and relay the information, or it's just that, just somehow being able to deliver sometimes difficult information. And you did that brilliantly in the movie, in a way that the human in the mix can hear it, can at least start to try to hear it. And so can you talk a little bit about, because it's kind of a fear factor thing. People are like, I'm afraid to believe this is real. I'm afraid. And I'm not even exactly sure what that fear is, like, I've been wrong all these years. Okay. Or that's something unknown and I'm scared of it. Maybe it's more, I don't know exactly, it's different for each person, but can you talk a little bit about how because you did it so well in your movie,
Well, I mean, whoever wants to become an animal communicator, if there's people here who want to be or who are interested, one can't separate from people, because eventually it's a person who's going to call you to ask you about an animal. Even if you're working in a zoo, it's still going to be a human being. It's going to call you. You're not going to get a bear in the middle of wilderness who's going to say, oh, I would like to communicate with someone. Could you please come over? They live their lives. They don't care about humans. They don't want to know about humans because we take away their territory. And they're not interested in us. So it's animals that are related to people in the first place. Always, even if it's a zoo or even if it's in a wild park, it's still a human being who's going to be accessing. So the same sensitivity that goes to perceiving what happens with the animal goes to perceiving the human being, because they are interconnected. So, like, I don't know if you remember in the movie when there's a part with the gorillas. I mean, and they talk a lot. There's a lot of information coming up about the people who are coming to take care of them, because they're connected with the human beings, and animals are their whole safety in those cases depends on a human being. So of course they're going to react to the emotions and how the human beings are feeling, because they know that their safety depends on that human being. So one has to be in tune with a human being. We can't separate it. And we have to be able to have the compassion for the human beings too.
It's so important. It's so important. And so it's just one of those things that we often don't think about when we walk into this territory and start having these amazing interspecies conversations where there's so much honesty and openness and trust, and there's depth of conversation. And then you kind of go back to your own species and you're like, I don't even know. There are times when I'm talking with an animal and I'm kind of at a loss for words for how to translate exactly what came in back into human language. So yeah. And I love that, we saw one of the things that was so cool and that I love about your work. Of course, you do work a lot with horses, and you have worked a lot with horses.
Dogs, cats, everybody.
Yeah, but see, in many cases, what happened, and in fact, it just happened to be this morning. I was at my chiropractor, and the aide that was getting me ready for my adjustment said, you mentioned you were an animal communicator, and my dog, I really need to talk to you because, I need my dog to stop. It's a problem thing. I need my dog to stop doing this, or you need to. I actually had one woman come up to me at a pet expo and say, can you fix my dog?
Yes.
And it's kind of like, it's a mentality of, well, when something's broken, we'll go fix it, versus it's about being curious and open. Have you found that people that are caring for other species are as open to animal communication, or is it still kind of this fix-it mentality?
Well, I mean, I've worked a lot in Europe. Mainly, I was one of the main pioneers, and it was really tough. Yeah. Trust me, you don't even know. I mean, I went through so much like hell. Sorry to use that term, but
we know all those words around here.
It was really difficult because, I mean, especially the horse world. I mean, of course, like the first introductions were with the horse world, because it was through this woman who changed she was very important in my life, Catherine, and she opened me up to the top horse world, the how do you call it, the main team, French national team. And then after that, I also worked with like the top horses and the top riders. A lot of stuff was done in secret. I wasn't allowed to say anything because these were like the top riders. And many times the riders didn't even want to talk to me. I would talk to the owners. And the riders, they were completely not against me or treating the animals not well. I started in a world that was very close to all of this. This was not California. This was not Los Angeles.
Yeah.
It was really not. And I was lucky. It was because I knew the mentality, because I was raised in France and Europe. So Switzerland and Belgium just came along, and I knew Spain really well. So because I knew the mentality, I was able to speak to people in a way that they could they could approach. Because if I had come as the way people speak in LA, they would have never accepted me. Never. It's just because I was raised there, I was able to open up the minds a bit. But it took a lot of years. It took a long time. And it was very difficult. It's not easy. It's not necessarily simple, and it's not something where you can expect gratification right away. And yes, they would consider that the animal needed to be fixed, or the animal, especially in the horse world, not necessarily the dogs and cats, but dogs and cats. Yes, there's a problem. Can you solve this for us? Because if not, they don't call you. They don't call you to find out like how the animal, his spirit, or any of that. Which I understand them. I understand. So also communication is not being a trainer. It's a different job. So communication is to understand what's going on, to get to the root of the issue, to understand the mind of the animal. A trainer or a behaviorist is something else.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. And it, I could really see that in the film as well, in some of your other clips where, the owner is very emotional. You could see the emotion. It's like there is this deep connection, but when he actually manages to come up with a reply, it's like, well, I really want to see more performance. I really want to see excellence. And so, and it really, I have had a few clients where, they really are very much focused on wanting to just get to know their animal better. But for the most part, it still does feel like we're really kind of trying to shift a top-down system.
Yes.
Where it's like, what if the animal really wishes their human would change, like, I wish you could fix my human.
That would be
so I know. So another question that comes up a lot, that because I have I love that you have a particular passion for horses. I have a particular passion for exotic species. I've always kept company with parrots and reptiles.
Yes.
And yet I find, we have a dog too, and we've always had dogs, but I find that it's like 95% of the contacts that I receive are from people that care for dogs or cats. And it makes me wonder if there's like a difference in mentality, or if, I actually, when my tortoise went missing for a week when she was 1, I actually called, this was well before I had any knowledge of my future career, that I was going to be doing this. And I was just hiring animal communicators. And I actually had a few communicators tell me, well, I can't talk to a tortoise. They don't talk the same way. Have you ever had that experience, that some species are easier to talk to, or more open, or deeper? I hear that a lot with horses, that horses, you go deeper with horses. There's a lot of kind of rumors. And because you've been in this field for so long and have spoken with so many different species of animals, I'm curious if any of that has ever come up for you.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see how I can answer that. So they all have consciousness, they all have feelings, and one can completely connect to any animal. So I used to be, speaking of reptiles, I used to be terrified of snakes, still am. And one of my friends, her son had a snake, and I did a communication, and it was absolutely beautiful. It was a beautiful feeling of connection in the mind with this snake, and I'm still terrified. Okay, so one can connect with any animal. Now, of course, an animal that is linked to a human being, there's going to be much more amount of stuff to say, because they take on a lot of human things, the emotions and our lifestyle. So there's more amount than if you're going to do a communication with a wild animal, which I've done, because out of situations of obligation, I was in danger, for example. And I don't recommend, I'm not recommending at all to do wild animals in this situation. Now for me, I've done a lot of cats. People call me a lot for cats, dogs, but I also have done a lot of horses. And I think maybe because I was brought, and I'm not a rider or anything, and I wasn't even raised with horses, but I worked a lot with horse people. So yes, there's a lot to say, but there's also a lot to say because there's an expectation of human beings towards that horse, like to achieve something usually. So that's why there is also a lot to say, because there's a lot of stuff to say about the relationship with the horse, the rider, what they want to achieve, etc. But with cats and dogs also, there's plenty to say. I mean, there's the relationship with the human being. Yeah, I think one can do any animal. It's not true one can't talk with a turtle. No.
Yeah, I've not found that to be the case.
No.
I mean, my tortoise she loves to talk.
Yes,
but
and it depends on the person. I've had people who say, I only want to be a communicator for cats because they like cats. So it's fine. I think it just depends on the person, what they want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that point, because there are so many reasons to learn the universal language of all species, in part just because we can. Yes. Because we're the only species on the planet that are not universally using it already. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's something else that's really interesting that comes up. I know we're getting close to time, but your background as in flamenco and in dancing, so maybe you weren't an equestrian, but it occurs to me that I have personally experienced that animal communication requires that we actually inhabit our bodies. Yeah. We must actually be in our bodies. We must feel what's going on in our body. Yeah. And I'm wondering if, I don't know where that came along in your journey and your growth. Did that, because I do a lot of yoga before sessions. I'm always encouraging, now that I have students of my own, I'm encouraging them to find movement that feels good to them, and try to get into their body. I feel like we are up here, we're in our heads a lot. Yes. We don't head downstairs very often. Yeah. So did you find that was helpful? Maybe deepened your ability to listen?
Wow, that's a good question. Never got that one before.
Well, I'm really curious, because it feels like, I mean, you're the sensual physical nature of it. It must be kind of magical in terms of really, you're aware of where everything is, and maybe you can see through your skin and hear through your mouth and see through your nose, and just animals are in their body. Other animal species are in their bodies. So
I mean, to me, it's more about presence than the body. So it's really about being there, completely being there with the animal in your mind, because you're doing this in your mind after all, and it's not tangible. But it's about this extreme, I call it, when I teach, I tell people, it's hyper presence. You're completely more present than present. And so, of course, anyone who's an artist and they're on stage, well, they have to be present, because you can't be on stage and thinking of something else. It just doesn't work. Because then you guarantee you're going to mess everything up. So every artist knows how to put their problems, aside and get on stage and be there completely in the moment. So I think it's, at least to me, it's more about that, the presence, than the actual body, because when I communicate, I forget about my body. When I'm in the communication, I'm really in the spirit, more spirit. And it's about presence. But presence can be developed, like you say, in the body, with doing yoga or being with animals, or you can develop presence many ways.
In so many ways. My love, are you done with your dinner? Yeah, I know. Mwah. Well, it's been a absolute pleasure and honor. Yeah, this is his dinner hour, so we like to have.
Thank you. This picture of you with the bird is just so beautiful.
Love you. 23 years together. That's incredible. other than my relationship with my mom and dad, that's the longest relationship in my life. So I know, and I'm privileged. I'm so lucky and so blessed. Yes, I am. So, well, we have come to the end of our time. I am so grateful for the connection and the chance to talk with you. And I want you, if you're willing and open to it, to share with our listeners and our viewers how people can reach you and how they can work with you. And I know you've got books. We've talked about the movie. So if you could share a little, maybe you've got some stuff coming up that you'd like to share. Of course, this will air in I want to say the end of August. It's going to air in the end of August, or it's right at the end of August, I believe. So any way that people can reach out to you or connect with you would be amazing.
Okay, so you want me to tell you now? Yes. So basically, there's the website, which is being redone. So hopefully by end of August, it should be finished. The main thing is to go on the website and check everything. Now, the books are published in French, Spanish, and Italian, and going to Portuguese. So I just got a publisher recently from Canada who's going to do the translations into English of the other books. Yes. The first one is in English. But the one on the afterlife, which is the most important one in my consideration, is going to hopefully come out soon. As far as workshops, most of them are in French up to now. We have done English, and I will continue doing English once in a while. Maybe in summer, I'm not sure. We'll see. Maybe September, October. That's about it for English language. There's a lot of things in English. The main thing I'm doing a lot now is a lot of healing. People are asking me all the time. That's my specialty. And I'm pretty booked for communications. But we are taking people from US because the waiting list for Europe is like 1 year.
Yeah.
Especially for the dead animal, deceased animals is very long. Yeah. But for US people, we're sticking them in somewhere because the time, I'm in LA, so the time zone is not as bad as European people. Yeah. Basically, that's it. Basically.
Wonderful. Well, Laila, grateful and honored and delighted to have this FaceTime with you, and grateful to share your story here on Let's Talk to Animals. It's always a blessing to connect with you as well, our dear viewers and listeners, and share how you can deepen your connection with the animals that you love in so many different ways. And whether it's through, hanging out a shingle and going pro, or it's you just want to turn on your bells and whistles and kind of learn more about how we're connected to all that is, all the other species around us, or you've got a passion for rescue or shelter animals, or fostering or a particular species. Truthfully, I say if you asked Laila and myself, you don't need a reason. But if you're seeking one, those are some really good places to start. Of course, you can visit lailadelmonte.com. You can visit animallovelanguages.com/podcast and find lots of great interviews with amazing intuitives and healers all over the world. And we're grateful for your time, your attention, and your heart for animals, and look forward to welcoming you back next week with a fresh new episode of Let's Talk to Animals. All righty. Sending you love and blessings, and bye for now. We'll see you again soon.